Hello everyone. Here we are going to discuss a major 20th century American poet, Wallace Stevens, with close reference to his phenomenal poem Sunday Morning. If I could sum up this poem in one word, it would be paganism. Even Wallace Stevens is quoted saying, the poem is simply an expression of paganism. The poem depicts a step by step transformation of the idea of God over different stages of human existence. The typical ideas regarding institutionalized religion are fading or waning down. With the advancements of the modern world, religious beliefs of the people are being challenged and shaken. What Stevens basically advances is the idea of an imaginative reality, a belief which is more philosophical and attends to the reality of the times we live in. Before moving on to an analysis of the poem, let's briefly discuss Wallace Stevens as a poet. One particular quality which is very notable regarding Wallace Stevens is his consideration of poetry as a merger of creative imagination and the factual reality. Some of his works are a bit complex, but the reason for that too is his love for the abstract, his tendency to jerk the reader into thinking it through. Even in Sunday Morning, the same abstract metaphysical ideas regarding beliefs, human tendencies, faith, and religion abound to a good degree. In knowing Wallace Stevens as a poet, it has to be kept in mind that the contrast between imagination and reality was a major concern with him. Whatever he did, whatever he wrote, much of it was meant to relate poetry to the imaginative faculty of the mind, and his work as an insurance lawyer as an objective reality from which the leisure hours of poetic creation after work provided the much needed relief. As Helen Wendler, a professor emerita at Harvard University, has noted, his work was also influenced by two late 19th to early 20th century painters, Paul Klee and Paul Cézanne, both working in the revolutionary art movements of the 20th century, namely Expressionism, Impressionism, or Post Impressionism, Cubism, Surrealism. From there, he receives his admiration and impulse for the abstract ideas in poetry. Whims and fancies play a comic role in the paintings of Paul Klee, and symbols are of great significance to his work, whereas Paul Cézanne's objective painting and his reductionist techniques were so influential that even Picasso, the famous Spanish painter, acknowledged him to be the father of modern art of painting. So, geometry was something very interesting to Cézanne, and he liked to reduce nature to a simple geometrical shape. For example, considering tree trunk as a cylindrical form or a fruit as a spherical object, simplifying the objective reality and then bringing in an abstraction to it is the main work of these people, and which is what Stevens brought to such perfection in his poetic craft. Before we go any further, I would like to bring your attention to another of Stevens's intriguing poems, A Rabbit as a King of the Ghosts, which is a simple poem really about consciousness and how it conflates with the world at large. It is a poem about a rabbit at evening which is aware of the danger of a cat which could attack it any moment. But there are moments when this threat is lifted and the rabbit strolls on the grass turf free in the peacefulest time and the cat is forgotten. This poem can be basically interpreted as a symbol of Wallace Stevens' own ideas about poetry and its function. The rabbit in the poem seems to represent poetic art, and that it comes out at night when the poet comes home from work and enters into a world of freedom and consciousness which is deeply personal, a world that exists between the work hours of the day and the dark of the night. The contrast between the two words, the prose like work life and the individual poetic freedom, is what defines Stevens's poetry. Poetry and imagination offer sensual pleasures for him, while the working hours seemed only a reality for the necessity of survival. Now let's proceed towards an analysis of the poem. So this poem has a character, a woman, and it is about a particular Sunday in her life when her thoughts became the subject of a host of theoretical contemplations regarding faith and Christianity in particular. So it's Sunday, even today is Sunday, and it is morning when we are discussing this and sharing this. But anyway, Sunday is a time for church and Christian households, a time to reach God and to go inside to reflect on oneself. But this particular woman in the poem did not go to church today, woke up late, and decided to sit outside her home in a nightgown and began enjoying a late breakfast. Complacencies of the peignoir and late coffee and oranges in a sunny chair. Peignoir is another word for nightgown. And the green freedom of a cockatoo upon a rug mingle to dissipate the holy hush of ancient sacrifice. So nature is making her forget her religious duties or her religious bindings. The first line of the first stanza sets this mood of complacency or of carelessness when it is late in the morning and a woman in her nightgown is sitting carefree with coffee and oranges on a bright sunny day. There is a reference to a cockatoo, a kind of a green parrot. Now it says that it is upon a rug, but if it's a real bird or a carving on the rug is still uncertain. But all these romantic thoughts make her forget about church as is signaled by the line, holy hush of ancient sacrifice. It might be a reference to the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, and if all the pleasures of natural beauty and all around her had not surrounded her in the manner that it does, she might be fretting about Christianity or the guilt of passing leisure time there when everyone else was at church. So, this stanza brings up the central idea of the poem, that being the conflict of nature and religion. Now, at this point, the woman and the poem both move from the description of the outer world to meditate at length on the inner world. She dreams a little, and then when she starts dreaming, everything goes wrong, or maybe right, which we'll come to know by the end of the poem. She dreams a little and she feels the dark encroachment of that old catastrophe as a calm darkens among water lights. The pungent oranges and bright green wings seem things in some procession of the dead, winding across wide water without sound. So she begins to dream, and as soon as she does that, that same old tragedy, that catastrophe, haunts her as if the moment of darkness just after the sunset at the edge of the vast ocean. This is a daydream. The catastrophe here might be a reference to the crucifixion of Christ. So, as during sunset there are strange sparkling lights on the overall dark area, so the darkness of the dream gives her some serious thoughts. This is just the moment of her transition from her active involvement in sensual pleasures of the outer world to that of the reflective inner self. And now again the image of oranges and the cockatoo returns, but the implications have become sinister. They seem to be pungent and dark, as if some funeral procession is going on. And what makes these things even more complicated is that this procession takes place across wide water and in the absence of sound, chilling silence, an intensely gripping line as is signaled by the repetition. Here it may be also said that since she has already begun reflecting about Christ even before she goes into a trance, this procession and the spirits that are a part of it might be in the procession of Jesus Christ himself or being led by him. And now the day itself has become like wide water, overwhelming, engulfing her and leading her to serious self thinking but in utter silence. The day is like wide water without sound, stilled for the passing of a dreaming feet over the seas to silent Palestine, dominion of the blood and sepulchre. She seems to be moving down the memory lane back to the ancient times when Christ was crucified in Palestine, and to ease her movement to the place and time, even the water has been stilled for her to pass in her dream over the seas to the place where the blood of Christ was spilled and the sepulchre or the tomb where he was buried. Then the second stanza begins. Why should she give her bounty to the dead? What is divinity if it can come only in silent shadows and in dreams? Shall she not find in comforts of the sun, in pungent fruit and bright green wings, or else in any balm or beauty of the earth, things to be cherished like the thought of heaven? Divinity must live within herself. So now again, the third stage has begun where divinity has moved to herself, inside her. With the second stanza, the skepticism about Christian faith truly emerges. While she was a passive element in the scene in the first stanza, here her active thoughts create a sort of friction in her free drifting towards or with Jesus Christ. So, skepticism regarding faith comes up. Here, the poet means that why should she give up the bounties, these sensual pleasures of juicy oranges, the beautiful cockatoo, while basking in the sun, all for some dead spirit or to be worshipping Christ, whom she doesn't know for sure is real? So, this is the moment of the beginning of crisis of faith in the poem. Next, she directly toys with the idea of religious faith, asking if God can appear to us only in silent shapes and dreams, such as the one currently running, then what is the point of his greatness? Why can't God be with her in her thoughts all the time? And juxtaposing divinity with the idea of natural world, she feels that earth and all its serene elements like sun, the fruits, the trees, the birds, and all are sufficient to calm her nerves. The heaven is natural world itself, so why should there be a need to seek another heaven? And what is significant to note in these lines is that she is not just seeking Epicurean or sensory pleasure, but she is revering nature as pagans do, or replacing the idea of religion with the idea of worshipping nature itself. Spirituality is what she is aiming at through these lines and her celebration of nature. These lines are very significant as here she moves to a basic change in belief from Christ to that of a God within herself. This is very close to the idea of the Romantics. So, what this divinity actually is then? It is her passions, her feelings, her emotions, her moods that she has at different times, and these moods are also evoked in her through specific natural personal elements such as rain, snow, or even loneliness. As she says, passions of rain or moods in falling snow, grievings in loneliness, or unsubdued elations when the forest blooms, gusty emotions on wet roads on autumn nights, all pleasures and all pains, remembering the boughs of summer and the winter branch. These are the measures destined for her soul. So she is made for that. The only parameters or measures of judging life for her would be her feelings, the psychological experiences she has following natural bliss. Then the third stanza begins. Jove in the clouds had his inhuman birth. No mother suckled him, no sweet land gave large mannered motions to his smithy mind. He moved among us as a muttering king, magnificent, would move among his hinds, until our blood, commingling virginal with heaven, brought such requital to desire. The very hinds discerned it in a star. So now in this stanza, he brings up the Roman and Greek religions which have been a great part of much ancient Western tradition in picture. Jove is the king of gods in Roman mythology. He is the god of sky, lightning, and thunder, much like Zeus, whom you might have seen in the popular cartoonized series Hercules. This worship of mythological gods comes under paganism, and because these gods, like Zeus or Jove, had their basis in natural phenomena like thunder and lightning, basically standing as representatives of crucial natural elements, paganism came to imply worship of nature. So Jove had an inhuman birth, unlike Jesus Christ, who was an incarnation. So Jove is a god in that sense that he was born through the gods and did not require nurturing as a normal human would do. Jove is a mythic god, and maybe he has as much a mythy mind that he himself fostered the myth regarding himself. So the poem gets a bit complicated here. Now, for the most part, Jove and such gods kept circulating the earth, but finally human qualities were attributed to them, and due to this commingling of the blood or the mixing of the human and the divine, the myth of Jove was born. And the hinds, or the people that these are the people that follow the king, his choir basically. The people basically, like hinds, realized this in the form of a star in the sky named Jupiter. So now again he questions humans that uh, shall our blood fail, or shall it come to be the blood of paradise, and shall the earth seem all of paradise that we shall know? The sky will be much friendlier than now. So this is it. So now he questions that humans have created and fostered these beliefs, and shall they fail in providing comfort that a belief in afterlife or paradise can, or shall earth be the only paradise we will come to know? So in other words, maybe earth is the or nature is the only reality. It is the only paradise that you can hope for, and there is no afterlife, no paradise that you are going to go to after death. But that the transition has not happened just yet. This is a poem wherein you will see a movement from mystical non-human gods like Jove to human incarnations of gods such as Christ, and finally to gods within every individual. So when earth really comes to be regarded as paradise, when it actually becomes a paradise, um, sky will be friendlier than it is now. It will come through our pain and labor, and hence be more realistic than the concept of heaven given by the institutionalized religions. The sky will be much friendlier than now, a part of labor and a part of pain, and next in glory to enduring love, not this dividing and indifferent blue. So it will be similar to a love that endures, never ending love. So it will not be this indifferent blue sky that right now divides the mm, heaven from earth. It will be more friendlier. Then the stanza 4 comes up. She says, I am content. So, first time she speaks in the first person. I am content when vacant birds, before they fly, test the reality of misty fields by their sweet questionings. But when the birds are gone and their warm fields return no more, where then is paradise? So, now where is paradise? This all ends. In this stanza, the woman's views are that even though uh, a bird flies and it doesn't just go straight away but examines the environment before it for some time, and only after being sure of the external reality it takes the flight, and it is also beautiful. But this serenity of natural instances is also momentous, as eventually the bird will fly away and the fields also change over time, but still the images of uh, you know flying birds and sunshine is continuing from the first stanza. So basically the mood is developing. What the next few lines say is that okay, it is okay that natural beauty won't last forever, but but what what are the ideas that religion has given, and have they lasted forever, or will they last forever? No. All their ideas, all the thoughts of afterlife which have come and gone are also temporary, so they cannot provide you nothing can provide you eternal bliss. There is not any haunt of prophecy, nor any old chimera of the grave, neither the golden underground, nor isle melodious, where spirits get them home, nor visionary south, nor cloudy palm, remote on heaven's hill. Nothing is there that has endured as April's green endures, as nature endures, as lush green, vegetation and flora and fauna of the month of April endures, or will endure like her remembrance of awakened birds. So nothing will endure in the manner the flight of birds that she remembers, or her desire for June and evening in June when a swallow, the bird swallow flies, tipped by the consummation of swallow's wings. So nature has been there for the longest of time. That is gist of this stanza, and it has been there for the longest of time than any of these religious prophecies and all, and hence a much better choice of paradise. Not any prophetic promises of all religions, not any place after death, or the golden underground, which is a reference to heaven in Greek mythology, or any magnificence, has lasted as long as natural world, and it must be the only real paradise. So Christianity is losing grounds. There is a sense of loss in these lines, and it was written in the midst of the First World War. The poem was written in the time when the First World War was going on, and the Second World War then happened, and now we are in a totally different existential crisis, where again people have started questioning the role of God in the times we are in. Why is no God coming to help humanity? Well, that's a crucial idea and can have a variety of interpretations too, but let's leave it at that. So by contrast to all of this natural beauty of the earth, April's green fields and the spring season all have lasted, and she hopes for the coming of the month of June, when the bird swallow flies and the evening would be beautiful and she will have again eternal bliss. So by now the poem seems to have become a dialogue between the woman's mind and her dreamy thoughts, and the poet who is reassuring her doubt. Then again the woman continues questioning. She says, but in contentment I still feel the need of some imperishable bliss. Death is the mother of beauty, hence from her alone shall come fulfillment to our dreams and desires. So now she says that I need something that does not fly away, that does not expire. Once again, her contemplation regarding the fleeting nature of earthly pleasures leads her to engaging more with doubtful thinking, and she hopes for a heaven where this peace, this joy never ends. And maybe Christian faith, with its promise of paradise, is not such a bad idea after all. But the answer she receives is that death and change are both necessary, otherwise everything would be dull with unending repetition. He compares death to a mother, and mother of what? Of beauty. It renews life. If it replaces something, um, if it removes something, then something else is given birth also by death. So it is not a bad thing as it is thought out to be. Death makes way for new and more beautiful occurrences, and the only worth of beautiful things comes when you are afraid of or conscious of losing them someday. That's why you cherish something. If it becomes a given that you shall have it forever without any change at all, then what's the point of losing it? Why will you cherish it? All human experiences of sadness, grief, happiness, love, victory are destroyed by death, but the same death causes us to experience beauty. Although it does not allow the grass to grow in winter, but it allows the willow trees to thrive in winters. So that renews life with something else, and no uh, at no point you should imagine it to be something depressing. Death is the mother of beauty, hence from her alone shall come fulfillment to our dreams and our desires. Although she strews the leaves of sure obliteration on our paths, although she obliterates things, the path sick sorrow took, the many paths where triumph rang its brassy face. All the sorrows and triumphs it removes, or love whispered a little out of tenderness. Every feeling is removed by death. She makes the willow shiver in the sun. But for maidens who were wont to sit and gaze upon the grass, relinquished to their feet, she causes boys to pile new plums and pears on disregarded plate. So for maidens who sit and gaze upon the grass, who were used to that, you know, uh, she death creates the willow trees or allows them to be there as as a part of natural beauty, and the boys can take the plate and pluck fresh fruits, and maidens can just eat and forget about the old paths or about the old leaves, the grass, and roam around savoring the moment of bliss. The maidens taste and stray impassioned in the littering leaves. Then the next stanza begins: Is there no change of death in paradise? Does ripe fruit never fall? So she asks about what heaven is like. Or do the bows hang always heavy in the perfect sky, unchanging, yet so like our perishing earth, with rivers like our own that seek for seas they never find, the same receding shores that never touch with inarticulate pang. So even in this stanza, the glorification of death continues and the idea of change is given a more soothing form. If everything stays perfect, the scene would become numbing and dull. The rivers would never flow into the ocean, and two banks of a river will never join. In other words, even if everything is perfect, the sense of fulfillment will never be there. So then, keeping the fruits to influence some maidens with their fragrance will never work, as nothing ever changes in heaven. That is the idea of heaven, right? Now, our ideas of heaven are basically of the softer pleasures that we experience as humans. If people do the same things there as we do here, if they wear the same clothes, eat the same food, play the same music endlessly, they would get bored to death at some point. Again, the idea of death being the mother of beauty is tossed around, and we return to it like Freud's idea of the basic desire in human beings to return to the comfort and safety of their mother's womb. Why set the pair upon the why set the pair upon the river banks, or spice the shores with the odors of the plum? Alas, that they should wear out our colors there, the silken weavings of our afternoons, and pick the strings of our insipid lutes. So, if they should wear our colors there, or our clothes, similar clothes there, or whatever, then it is of no good. That is the mother of beauty, mystical, within whose burning bosom we devise our earthly mothers waiting sleeplessly. Then the next stanza again turns to a full fledged ceremony of pagans celebrating and rejoicing and worshipping the nature as God. This is the most important stanza in the poem because it presents the crux of the poem. Supple and turbulent, a ring of men shall chant in orgy on a summer morn, their boisterous devotion to the sun, not as a god, but as a god might be, naked among them, like a savage source. Their chant shall be a chant of paradise out of their blood, returning to the sky, and in their chant shall enter, voice by voice, the windy lake wherein their Lord delights. So, these group of men are dancing and enjoying their devotion to the sun and the natural elements. Nature worshippers, as always, as you know, they do, they glorify nature if not as God, then as some god-like figure. And it is a key feature of paganism. That is why it is being contrasted here with Christianity. So, and sun is a savage source. It indicates that though the sun is the source of all life and it is good, but it sustains them also, and it can become wild and destructive also. So it has double face. It can be dual faced. That is what is being hinted here. Nature can be destructive at any point, which is we are seeing right now. As these people treat nature like a god and earth as the only heaven, their chanting shall be like chanting in paradise. But again, human beings are also crucial to the idea of paradise, as it's their consciousness that imagines the idea of a paradise. If human beings are not there, then nobody would be able to think of these things. Only human beings can think of the idea of paradise because they have a mind to do so, they have a consciousness to do so. So they create the idea, and without them, the sun, the moon, the sky, even the nature would be just elements without any deeper indications attached to them. Now the other natural elements, the sound of the wind, that is flowing over the lake, the echoes of the hills, the waving trees, the seraphims, which in Hebrew means angel-like beings, all shall again, join their chant and praise with these people, the nature god. So now, and in their chant shall enter voice by voice the windy lake wherein their Lord delights, the trees like seraphim, echoing hills that choir among themselves long afterward. They shall know well the heavenly fellowship of men that perish and of summer morn, and whence they came and whither they shall go, that dew upon their feet shall manifest. So these men live in the present, and they are aware of the fact of their temporary existence. In other words, these pagan men don't aspire for immortality. That is what it is saying here. They just want to live in the moment. Then the last stanza, she hears upon that water without sound a voice that cries, the tomb in Palestine is not the porch of spirits lingering, it is the grave of Jesus where he lay. We live in an old chaos of the sun, or old dependency of day and night, or island solitude, unsponsored, free of that wide water, inescapable. Now, the final stanza is there, and she realizes that there are no spirits hovering around the grave of Christ, but just a grave of Jesus. This is just to indicate that the voice speaking to her tells her that if um, even if Christ is buried there in Palestine, there is no afterlife, no spirits, nobody encircling his burial place. So, summing up his argument, the poet claims that there is no other paradise or life after death except the chaotic, complex yet desirable existence we have on earth. Nature doesn't bind anyone, it lets people revel in their freedom. It has days and nights and islands where one may find solitude, but still be free of the inescapable wide water of eternity that people call paradise. But it can be very frustrating, or even very numbing, as the earth is shrouding everyone within its bow and is inescapable. Uh, so, in ultimate lines of the poem, nature is addressed directly. You know, Deer walk upon our mountains, and the quail whistle about their spontaneous cries. Quail is a type of bird. Sweet berries ripen in the wilderness, and in the isolation of the sky, at evening, casual flocks of pigeons make ambiguous undulations as they sink downward to darkness on extended wings. So, in the ultimate lines of the poem, we see that human beings have been moved out of the picture. Nature is not dependent on human beings, it just carries on with its own processes. We are surrounded by water, wide water, 70% of the earth is water, and we are only allotted a small area of land to live on, to thrive on. Just like the wide water, the overwhelming, all enshrouding oceans, the world of nature is mysterious and complex. It has deer walking upon mountains, and birds like quails whistling and crying, and berries growing. When the sky is isolated in evenings, the pigeons take a flight, and sink downwards into darkness. So this image again, we must remember, is a part of the woman's unending soft stream of consciousness that is going on, that is right from the middle of the first stanza. So the flight of pigeons into darkness symbolically refers to the woman's own transition into the chaos and mystery of the natural world, bereft of religious rituals and conformity. The poem is written in blank verse, traditionally a poetic form that uses iambic pentameters. There are alliterations, enjambments, assonances, and similes spread throughout the poem. Essentially, the root theme of the poem is spirituality and the natural world. There could be anyone in place of the woman, a man, an animal, anyone, as even Stevens himself noted. This is not just a woman's meditation on religion and the meaning of life, but is anybody's meditation. So we must realize how this poem is related to the waning of religious faith. That is our contemporary reality too. You will find people asking outright in today's scenario that where is God in the midst of this pandemic? Why is no divine power coming to uh, save humanity or to l- protect them? The answer of this poem is that the idea of God or religion is a fiction, and so one must believe in nature, that is something real. And even though it is we can worship nature, we will never expect something out of the ordinary from it. Nature is the only God and our only reality, and we know that no one is coming to save us from beyond the skies, to rescue us, to uplift us. There will be no redemption, and we have to find our own ways out. That is the gist and the basic idea of the poem. This is it. Thank you.